Welcome, everybody, to the Forest Hill School District Board of Education regular meeting on Wednesday, October 18th. Call to order.
Mr. Bibb?
Here.
Mrs. Jonas?
Here.
Dr. Rasmussen?
Here.
Mrs. Stewart?
Here.
Mrs. Hosfeld?
Here.
President Hosfeld, members of the board, at this moment before we really get started, I think it would be appropriate for us to acknowledge a terrible loss that we suffered recently in the Forest Hill School District. Just a few short weeks ago, a Turpin student passed away. And while it's impossible for us to put into words the impact this loss has on our students and staff, I would ask our thoughts and prayers be with the family that they're still dealing with this loss. I do want to mention for anyone, we do have resources on our website if you're struggling, not just now, but with this in particular. We have some resources available there. At this point, before we start, I just ask that we'd all kind of have a moment of silence and remember this family. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Item 1.3, the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1.4, we have the safety briefing. The doors that you came in is an exit door, as well as two of the doors down here in the front on either side. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Mrs. Jonas?
Yes.
Mr. Bibb?
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen?
Yes.
Mrs. Stewart?
Yes.
Mrs. Hosfeld?
Yes. Item 3.0, the minutes. Do I have a motion?
I can make a motion to approve items 3.1 and 3.2 as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Jonas?
Yes.
Mr. Bibb?
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen?
Yes.
Mrs. Stewart?
Yes.
Mrs. Hosfeld?
Yes. Item 4.0, we have the reports to the Board of Education. First up, we have the Forest Hills Teachers Association. Mr. Chris Preston.
Hello and good evening. I hope you all are enjoying fall. I have a brief report to give. I've mentioned my visits to our buildings since the start of the school year that have a purpose of saying hello to our staff and communicating an appreciation for the work they do with our students. Since last month's board meeting, I've had the pleasure of visiting Air, Maddox, Sherwood, and Summit Elementaries. I plan to wrap up my visits to our buildings with Mercer Elementary this week. I can tell you that our Forest Hills teaching staff is filled with energy, smiles, and an appreciation for a community that supports and values education and the home. One of the ways that we bridge the gap between school and home is through parent-teacher conferences. Our high school and middle school staff completed their fall parent conferences a few weeks ago, and our elementary teachers are gearing up for their round of fall parent conferences starting next week. As a middle school teacher, I see firsthand how important it is to have open dialogue. Clear communication of student strengths, areas for growth, and ideas for support are critical conversations to have between teacher, student, and parent. We thank our parents and community for being strong supporters of our students and their education. And we admire our students for their hard work, their energy, and the daily inspiration they provide us. By listening to them, we can gain insight on how to improve their experience in the classroom. The Forest Hills Teachers Association remains dedicated to the welfare and development of both our educators and our students. We appreciate the ongoing collaboration with the Forest Hills School District, Board of Education, community members, and partnerships with our parents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have the superintendent update. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to back up.
Sit down.
Woo!
Don't get off that easy.
I won't race you. Stacy Gilliard with the Forest Hills Foundation.
Man, you turned around awful fast.
You're taking off.
Well, and you got to be careful walking down those stairs, too. Good evening. I hope everyone is doing well. On behalf of the Forest Hills Foundation, I look forward to sharing a few updates with you this evening. First, I'd love to start with, we are in the final days of our 15 years, 15 days, 15,000 campaign. I just checked, so this was probably like at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and we were at 7,800, and actually I just checked and it's over 12,000. So between today at 2 and this evening, we did send a special email out in regards to the fact that we continue to support a child-focused therapist and how these funds can be used as we continue to help and support the kids' health and well-being. So if you have not participated, every amount counts. Again, this goes to the kids, to our community, and we hope you will join us as we celebrate 15 years. Second thing is on Friday of this past weekend, so last Friday, we were so honored to recognize actually 5 distinguished alumni and 1 distinguished staff member at the luncheon at Ivy Hills Country Club. And I know some of the folks in this room were in attendance. You can clearly see Victor Prince is on this picture. This was from the event. Brian Reed, both from Turpin, Dee Dee Hamlin from a retired staff member from Air Elementary, and then Annie Warner, who graduated from Anderson in '98. 2 of the recipients were unable to be there. 1 actually was in Switzerland, sent a video message from Switzerland. Phyllis Farrell. The second person was, it's just leaving my mind, Dr. T. John Winhusen, and he was actually at a work conference. He works for the University of Cincinnati and in their psychology and addiction services. So what I wanted to say is for those that were in attendance, I always think it's so great that we take time to honor and recognize alumni that come out of this community. I also want to say that after that luncheon, I was so inspired and so motivated by seeing so many wonderful people talk about the fantastic district and community that we are a part of. And so it was a lovely event. We will continue to keep in touch with these alumni, but it just was a really great evening to know the caliber of people that come out, students that come out of this community. So congrats to all of the 2023 recipients. And the last thing I have tonight is who's ready for some fun? Because I don't know. As I was driving here, somebody was yelling at someone in their car. And I was like, man, we need more love. We need more kindness in this world. So I'm ready to share some fun with everyone. The fall soiree is actually going to be on November 11th. It's going to be at Ivy Hills Country Club. It's going to be a fun night as we celebrate 15 years. We have several folks that have signed up to be hosts, probably about 23 individuals, and we look forward to a fun evening. Again, this is one of the foundation's signature events that we host. This is in the fall, and then we do the 5K in the spring. So if you have not been, we encourage you to come. It's a great opportunity to connect with other parents, community members, as we continue to support the kids. So any questions? Okay, and just a big thanks to everybody for your support. The foundation is able to do the work we do based on our donors and people that support the organization. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Hook with the superintendent update.
Thank you, President Hausfeld, members of the board. Very proud to say that all 9 of our school buildings within the Forest Hills school system for the first time will be awarded and recognized by the Ohio Department of Education for its successes in PBIS, which is Positive Behavior Intervention Support Systems. PBIS has been shown to improve student achievement, student behavior, as well as school climate. And the framework helps students by focusing on their strengths and building on their confidence to succeed. It's a research-based system that utilizes a positive approach to discipline, which leads to a reduction in office referrals, in school suspensions, both in school and out of school. That obviously, those decrease instructional time for students. There are approximately 3,656, give or take one, public school buildings in Ohio, and about 611 school districts. Last year, only 375 schools and only 16 districts were awarded and honored by the state for their accomplishments in PBIS. So again, we believe that we're in some pretty rarefied air thanks to our staff, our administrators and teachers that work so diligently at it. Each building has a PBIS team that works on this, and so in an upcoming board meeting, we would like to invite them in and recognize them, and because that's not easy work. It's hard work, and it's just truly amazing what they've done. So kudos to everybody. I believe for the second time, our district as a whole will also be recognized. So when it all comes in from the state, and who knows when that'll happen, because I don't know where the state is right now, whether it's which part of the government it's in. So, but we will have some more information on that as it comes along. Legislatively, I think some of the two biggies are, is ODE alive and well, or is it now with the Department of Education and Workforce? We haven't decided yet. I don't think anybody knows. There's an injunction right now in place up in Columbus, which kind of freezes the process, I believe until the 20th or so of October, and then there'll be a ruling. So we shall see where that ends up. But it certainly, there are some issues that we got to deal with, and some of that deals with the science of reading and literacy as well. There's some pretty big things. The dyslexia bills that are, you got to have some place to be able to communicate with, and so we're in that limbo phase. Hopefully that'll move forward, however that's determined, but it will move forward and give us some clear definition of guidelines there. The other one that's out there that I just want to make mention to you, obviously everybody's aware of property tax valuations going up across the state, double digits. I do want to say, it's sitting right now in House Bill 187. Those have been passed over to the Senate, who will probably start their hearings next week on their version, and then they'll go into a conference, and then we'll have to figure that out. The reason I bring that up is, as we move, supposedly this would be going into effect January 1. Okay, so that's not too far away. But I don't want, we're still dealing with House Bill 920. Okay, and so how does that interplay? Right now, we're thinking, we believe it's 27% property tax increase as an average. Your house may go up more, somebody else's house may go up less, but on average, it's going to be 27%. Okay, that doesn't mean your taxes go up 27%. Okay, that's what House Bill 920 did back in the late 70s. Okay. It put a limit. So what happens is the amount of millage that you have, the amount of millage that you're collecting gets reduced. the auditor's required to do a reduction factor to lower that down, okay, even though it's 27% increase, you won't pay that, okay? We can't collect any more than what our original levies were passed for at that time. So if it was this last levy, when we put it on the ballot, was for total of 6.9 mils to collect X number of dollars, we'll only collect X number of dollars. It won't collect at 6.9, not at a 27, because they'll apply the reduction factor. Can I tell you exactly what it would be? No, but I'll bet you it's going to be south of, it's going to be around 5 maybe, in that neck of the woods, I'm guessing. That's a rough guess. It's just a guess there. They'll have to do that, but he's required by law, or she, the auditor, has to reduce that down. It's that reduction factor. That's what 920 does. So you won't be paying 27% more in your property taxes. And I think once we have that final figure, I think Alana, we'll have a pretty nice detailed thing. But I know things, people start panicking, you know, in some counties you're talking 40%. That's scary. I can understand that, you know. The other piece, you know, right now, about half of the districts in the state of Ohio are on the 20 mil floor. Now, it goes back to a little bit of School Finance 101. You're required, every school district that collects state dollars is required to have at least 20 mils on the books. You can't go below. What happens is they raise you up. You know, in other words, you apply it to say you're on the 20 mil floor right now, like Indian Hill. Indian Hill, they're on the 20 mil floor. They can't go below 20 mils. So guess what a 27% pay increase in property tax does to them? Okay, you apply the reduction factor so they can't collect any more dollars, right? Well, that millage, that reduction factor is going to drop below 20 mils. They're required by law to raise taxes back up to the 20 mil floor. So if you were living in Indian Hill right now, I would say that the treasurer's probably looking to see, whoa, what's going to happen. But about half the districts in Ohio are in that. So that's one of the biggies they got to get figured out quickly, okay? We're not on the 20 mil floor, so this whole thing won't impact us in the same manner at all, okay? Now, how fast they can get this all settled, how fast auditors can get this on the books so that they know, there may be some delay. And that could create some problems. That's the other thing that everybody's a little bit worried about. How fast can you get this all in place? Because all of a sudden you start getting towards, you know, the end of your fiscal year. If you're on the front end of a levy cycle like we are, okay, if it's delayed a few months, okay, we'll still get our money. You'll still get your money from the state. You'll still get it. But think about it. If you're on the backside of a levy cycle where you're ready to go on the ballot, or you go on the ballot now and you fail, I don't know what you do. You have to borrow money from the auditor or from the state. You have to find some place. You'll be struggling to make payroll. So there's some unique things that's taking place at the state level, and I think what's happening is all of a sudden our legislators are going, oh, this is a biggie. Yeah, this is big. This is a lot of districts in Ohio. So I think that you'll hear something pretty quickly at the end of October and into November, you know, but they got to move pretty quickly because this all supposed to go into effect January 1. So stay tuned. You know, like I said, I think that and trying to decide who's running the state board is the big biggies that are going on. There are other things going on for sure, but I also wanted to mention a couple weeks ago, myself, Alana, John Eckert. We met with Representative Rachel Baker and her aide about the possibility of receiving some funds from the state capital projects budget. I shared that information on a recent board update, but I think we're all really hopeful that it can come to fruition. Just so you know, in brief, the state's capital budget is managed through the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, OFCC, and it provides dollars. It was part of the tobacco settlement way back, and part of the DeRolf cases, you know, trying to find an answer to public school funding. But the dollars for a specific project can be submitted to a state rep or a state senator. We have identified one of the first things we'd love to have. It's about a $400,000 price tag on it. Are digital security radios and the system that supports it. That would enhance our total school security program. That would be really nice because it provides instant communication throughout the district. Even as hilly as ours is, it will provide instant communication throughout the district and with our SROs. You know, I think we learned a very valuable, maybe a scary lesson with the situation with the fake call-in over at Princeton. What was the worst thing that happened to them? Nobody's cell phones worked. It's like going to a Bengals game, trying to send a text out or get it. You can't. It's all hitting it at the same time. That's what they found out, and this is an answer to it, but it's not a cheap answer. So I'm hopeful. We'll give a couple other items as well, and we'll be sending those to Representative Baker here by the end of this week or the first of next week. And as I understand it, then the lawmakers submit all the requests that come in to the finance chairperson, and leadership committees review those requests, finalize recommendations for possible appropriations I think the deadline is in June of '24. So stay tuned. That would be an awesome thing. That really would. I can't think of anything that would be really help our district. That would be nice. So stay tuned. I'll keep you posted if you hear any more. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I just have a quick question. When you're talking about PBIS, and then you mentioned the 3,656 schools in Ohio, and there were 375 schools awarded, is there a place that people can go to check that out?
Yes, you can go to the state website. Just go to the search bar, go into PBIS. You'll kind of have to click around in there, and you can find it.
Okay, great. And thank you also for explaining the property tax and the mills and the
It's a scary thing right
yep,
now.
the
think for
floor
people.
level. I don't think a lot of people realize that. So thank you for explaining all of that to everybody. So, okay, moving on to public commentary, 6.0. The board is committed to conducting its meetings in a productive and efficient manner to assure that the meeting is completed in a reasonable amount of time, but also recognizes the importance of fair and adequate opportunity for public input. The board provides public participation. Will be a total of 30 minutes. Each speaker will have a 3-minute time limit. If there are more than 10 speakers, individual time will be adjusted down to fit within the 30 minutes. We do not allow yielding time. The board does not discriminate based on the individual content of the speech or viewpoint of the speaker. If several people wish to speak on the same topic, the time limit may be adjusted by the president's discretion. Speakers are asked to speak from the podium, address the board, and are also asked to clearly state their name and address. We have 3 speakers this evening. First up, we have Kevin Misiak.
Good evening. I don't really feel like I need the microphone, so hopefully everybody in back will be able to hear me. I'm told I can be fairly loud. My name is Kevin Misiak. I live at 8433 Holiday Hills Drive, right over here in Summit Estates. I've enjoyed coming to these board meetings for many years prior to COVID. Met Bob Bitt at one of my meetings, and it's nice to see him kind of go back to how they used to be, nice and boring and quiet. My topic last month was on academics, and my compliments to the district on the staff's focus on academics over the last few years. I know it hasn't been hard, hasn't been easy, but you have accomplished, and I do appreciate that. My topic tonight is on behavior, public and school behavior. Over the last few years, we have not enjoyed quiet, peaceful school meetings. All right? To my left and to my right are evidence of why that's a fact. It's unfortunate. It would be nicer to see us all go back to more civil discourse. I don't really expect that, and I don't think any of you really do either. The board may want to consider, the district may want to consider additional video surveillance, so that when things, not if, but when things get out of hand again, we will at least have video evidence for our officers here to protect us so they can address the issues appropriately. One of the issues that I've seen here is private phone use to video surveil other members of the community. All right? Who doesn't love it when you have a phone shoved in your face? Don't we all? We look forward to those opportunities. All right? So it's a bit of a provocation. We've seen it again tonight, Ms. Rasmussen. Saw it tonight. It was fun. So the other behavior that I'm concerned about is bullying in the school. All right? I am aware of a few incidents, anecdotal. All right? And I'm concerned about the district's reporting. I'm concerned mostly about staff's reporting of those instances. My advice to the community is, if your child is physically assaulted in school, you may want to consider turning to Anderson Township Sheriff's and file a report to make sure that your child is protected from physical acts of bullying in our school district. Because that would be unfortunate if something were to happen tragically and not go reported till after the fact. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Next up, we have Speaker Olivia Krozlik. Pardon me if I've pronounced that wrong.
Good evening. My name is Olivia Krolchak, and I'm a 20-year-old college student at the University of Cincinnati. I come here tonight to speak of concerns that I have regarding the future generation of girls in the school district. There are many individuals involved with the school and running for school board who fail to recognize the fundamental distinction between males and females. As an athlete of 10 years in both cross country and track, it breaks my heart to hear people in this school district support the idea of allowing boys into girls' sports. Regardless of age, hormone treatment, and surgeries, the biological differences between boys and girls are evident. It's important to protect the integrity of female sports in order to support the dreams of young girls and maintain fairness. It is not fair to allow a boy to compete in a girl's sport simply because he does not feel comfortable in his own body. Why do his feelings stand above the girls who will lose out on countless opportunities because of him? It's the job of adults and faculty members to step in and help address the real mental health issues causing this. And it doesn't end with sports. It's appalling that those affiliated with the school have no desire to protect girls in their locker rooms and bathrooms. Girls deserve safety and privacy in vulnerable spaces, especially at the age where their bodies are beginning to change. The adults in this district have a duty to protect these young girls and provide a safe single-sex space. I would also like to touch on the recent controversy regarding the diversity mural here in this district. I applaud the school for taking measures to cover a mural that claims to depict diversity, when in reality it promoted indoctrination of young students. Of course, the idea of inclusion is wonderful, and everyone should have an equal opportunity to succeed. However, in today's society, this comes at the expense of freedom of speech and erasing female rights. As I said, I'm a student at University of Cincinnati, and this past summer I was failed in a diversity, equity, and inclusion course that was required for my graduation. The reason I was failed is because I used the term biological woman while completing a project where I wrote about the rights and opportunities of females in sports and how they're being taken away by males. This is where I quickly learned that diversity, equity, and inclusion truly meant division, exclusion, and intolerance. Schools shouldn't endorse ideologies that promote mental health issues, the erasure of women, and the suppression of free speech. Nor should schools contain artwork or literature that revolve around sexuality and claim to show diversity. Let's continue to keep these things out of school and protect the integrity of female sports. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Jeff Nye.
Hi, Jeff Nye, 1000 Eversole. Two things I want to talk about today. One is something I've talked about before, which is a plea for transparency. For at least the third time in the last few months, last month's consent agenda was not approved unanimously. I'm reading here from Robert's Rules of Order, which is the parliamentary manual for the board. It says that the consent agenda is reserved for routine or non-controversial matters to which no member objects. In other words, if any member objects to any item in the consent agenda, that should be removed from the consent agenda and discussed and debated separately. It does not require a majority vote, requires only one member's request. It's not only in Robert's Rules of Order, Section 41, there's a school board policy, 165.1 D or E, that says the same thing. So if there's any item in tonight's consent agenda that is not in fact unanimous, please remove it from the consent agenda, discuss and debate it so we know what it is that is not unanimously approved. Simple transparency. Second, a couple of weeks ago, we got an email from the superintendent that said something to the effect of, our first priority at Forest Hills is creating a safe and secure environment for the students, and including their mental and emotional well-being. It is really hard to believe that. It is really hard to take that at face value with some of the things that have happened in this district in the last few months, including at Nagel recently, and in the last year and a half or so, including the resolutions you guys passed last June. Last month, you heard from, 8 or 10 students in this district, people who actually go to school here, who stood up here in front of you and said, that makes me feel less safe. It makes me feel less secure. It makes me feel unwell. Please listen to them and repeal that resolution.
Thank you. Next up, we have Human Resources.
Good evening to the board. We have a few items on our HR report this evening, and then I'll spend a few minutes working through our FTE reconciliation that we went into a lot more detail on Monday at the HR board committee meeting. Starting with item A, we have retirements, and I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment, and I know I do this every month, but particularly on this month, we have 7 new retirees for the board's approval this evening, and collectively, and then there is an 8th where there's a revision on the date. So Edie Zimmerman, we celebrated a bit last month, but the prior 7 constitute over 200 years of experience in the Forest Hills School District collectively, and that in and of itself, I feel like, is worthy of attention and recognition and deep sense of gratitude for their commitment to our students. That's not that's not including the additional years of service that they might have in STRS, working in other school districts as well. So just in this district alone, 200 years among them. We certainly wish each and every one of them all the best and a happy final stretch here as they wrap up the first quarter of this school year, and look forward to many memories in this final year of their career in Forest Hills. And I would make mention too that one thing for the board's consideration on this, we tend to see these retirements come in over the course of the school year, and sometimes they, come at different times. If the board recalls, we did put in place Article 47, an early notification incentive, and that is something that I know has kind of gotten some people's attention. There's also the early retirement separation incentive, but that early notification is really helpful on a staffing side because it gives us plenty of time ahead of time to kind of consider next year and implications and all of that. So just something to keep in mind as we're considering this evening's report. I would then just draw your attention down to our volunteers list. Always like mentioning them. We have over 100 volunteers for your approval this evening, and certainly want to thank them in advance and for being part of making this place a great place. And I say that on the heels of so many walkathons and just the things that have happened over the last couple weeks. I know Maddox's is coming up Friday. It's just incredible what our parents and community do for our schools. So thank you there for those volunteers. A number of job descriptions just updated, some trailing our negotiations, and just some verbiage on some of those job descriptions there. And then that's it on the actual HR report. If there are questions on that, happy to answer them at this time before moving on to our FTE reconciliation. All right. So got a presentation up here. I promise I limited it down to about 36 slides. So I did get a couple laughs. Thank you, Anna. No, I will be brief, but I would like to kind of generally give an overview just as a reminder to the board. In October, we do this in the HR department every year. We kind of reconcile where we ended the contract year, closing June down, and then as the dust starts to settle in October, looking at any changes in these classification groups. So the chart up here represents where we are in each of those different job classifications as compared to closing out last contract year in June of 23. And you'll see down at the bottom, you can see the total FTE reconciliation there on the far right corner at 12.01 in terms of a net reduction. So there are obviously some nuances in this, and I think sometimes it's worthwhile just mentioning what we mean when we say FTE. It's an acronym that I know we love in education, to have an acronym for everything. And sometimes that just complicates things. But this is a full-time equivalent, and it can be misunderstood because it doesn't necessarily equate to bodies in the district, right? So obviously, 0.04 would be a very interesting employee, but it's about as a percent of the total hour in that job classification. So between teachers and admin assistants, you can see, there's like admin assistants, for example, 25 straight up. We're not sharing any in that category, and it's 25 individuals. And in some places, particularly in transportation, food service, where they're more hourly, not as many full-time individuals, they'll be split out there. So if you go to the next slide, I'll kind of break this down bit by bit here, and starting with our largest job category, and that's our certified, our teachers. And I also have got the OPSI 273, that's our paraprofessionals. You'll note an overall net reduction of 12.15 in our certified staff. it's important to keep in mind that about 34% of that is a reduction of those ESSER-funded positions that were 3-year positions. There were 3 intervention specialists and 1 counselor at the secondary level. I say counselor at the secondary level. The intervention specialists were at the elementary, and those had been understood to be a 3-year time-bound position. I do want to pause on that because it is worth at least noting that while the funding for those positions has dried up, and we knew that going in and in good faith made those reductions, our needs in those areas have not really reduced any. And I think since COVID, you know, you've been hearing enough from us in terms of board information updates, just in terms of some of those areas that we are certainly looking at and leaning into to try to make sure that we're getting the support that we need. But that having been said, in addition, we obviously made a few reductions ahead of our operating levy in May. Those are listed there as well. There is a typo, the 4 central office FTEs, those are in the certified staff. There were 2 that were secondary learning design specialists. There were also 2 district case manager positions that were combined and absorbed into that coordinator position that Brad Early has assumed. So we'll get to the administrative side on the other in a minute. Other than that, the additions we made, we did add a 0.5 IS at AIR due to student enrollment and need there. That was an additional 0.5 that was reduced the year prior and not filled. So it is a bit of a return to where we once were. And that brings me to just a sidebar in terms of how we calculate our FTEs. I shared at our committee meeting on Monday that with our transition from FileMaker in HR to eFinance, being in full alignment with our Treasurer's Department, Alana and I are excited to transition the manner in which we calculate our FTEs into what we consider to be position controls, which in essence, the board approves X number of teaching positions, for example, and at this meeting, we would report out the percent that has been filled, and if we've gone over that. The reason why that's a nice way to go at it is because of the fact that when we get to transportation, for example, we're 5 routes short. So it's going to appear as if maybe we've added in transportation when really we're not even yet full, if that makes sense. So I know it's a little complicated. I'm not doing a great job of explaining it, but just know that you know, this would be a great example of 0.5 IS that wasn't filled 1 year, but it's still a board-approved position, so we might be at 95% fill rate, where we really want to be at 100%. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah. Can I
Go
ask
ahead,
a question
Katie.
to
Yeah.
follow up? Okay, so when we're looking at, well, the screen I have up, it says like we are down 12 FTEs. Are those positions all needing to be filled, or have we lost?
And that's kind of what I mean.
That's
like,
that's what I was
yeah.
trying to figure out if do we need 12
so
employees
on the certified side, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit easier to understand because we're not dealing so much in variable hourly positions. So these are positions that we knew were being reduced. The ESSER positions, as I mentioned, the positions that were reduced by attritionary measures leading up to the levy. And so, you know, in terms of are they needed back, they've been pulled out of the 5-year forecast, right?
Okay.
So those positions, now ESSER was kind of a bit different, nuanced on its own, but those are pulled out. In anticipation of the levy, those were pulled out of the 5-year forecast. So if that answers your question.
Actual reductions,
yeah.
but like transportation, it says we're down
Right.
2.84, but we're actually looking to hire
Exactly.
bus drivers. So that's where
That's why it's just odd when we talk about it in these terms, and I think our new system is actually going to be really helpful. It'll
Yeah.
make this process a whole lot more palatable, I think, for everybody to kind of see truly where we are.
Okay.
As far as paraprofessionals, we did add 0.8. That's a Monday through Thursday So it's a full-time, but it's Monday through Thursday para at our preschool. And so that was based on need and continued, student enrollment and specialized need at the preschool level. If you go to the next slide, please, Jody, yeah, thank you. And in 177, this category, we've got a net reduction of 2.91, and this kind of speaks to what you were saying. So I've kind of mentioned this already. We do have 5 vacant routes. It appears as if there's been an increase in transportation, but we're still not full. Okay. Similarly, on other support, it includes other support, two positions of which would be intervention aides and bus monitors. The intervention aides, those were the higher resigned positions last year that we added kind of around this time, maybe last year, September-ish, for enrollment. So those were pulled out. And so again, that's factored in, but it wasn't really something that was considered to be in the 5-year forecast because it was a higher resigned positions. In terms of true additions, the maintenance position there was an additional add that that we have notified the board about, I think July or August, and we filled that position. And then similarly in food service, we've added, and those were previously vacant positions as well. Next slide. Last one on the exempt side. Admin and exempt side. I mentioned the special ed coordinator for the preschool absorbing a couple of those different district case manager responsibilities on an administrative contract. And then the exempt admin assistance net impact was an increase of 1.22, really offset by the reduction in that Allerton Hill contract. I know it's cold. Are you cold?
Yes.
I know.
Yes. Very cold.
Anyways, so that's just something, it's not necessarily the par for par, but it was something that we felt was highly needed in supporting our communications department. And I would say on that note, Arden Miller has been phenomenal. She's been a great addition to the team and really excited to have her with us. And then we had previously 2 in payroll that one of them went down, and upon her retirement, we brought it back to where we've been in the past. That was a lot, I'm sorry. Questions?
I asked mine.
Okay, with that, I don't believe we've started our consent agenda, so I think I'd like to recommend that the board approve the HR report as presented.
This does start the consent agenda.
Oh, are we on a consent?
Yeah. this
Okay,
is-
great.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Next up, Biz Ops.
Thank you, President Hosfeld. I actually do not have any actionable items this evening. I just wanted to give a couple quick updates to the board on a few items. The first thing I did want to let know, the OFCC grant at this point has been completely contracted out, and all items that were in that grant will be beginning to get purchased and installed and stuff for the remainder of the year. Very happy to get all that under contract, finally. It's federal money is quite the paper trail to get taken care of, and Ms. Cropper is definitely making sure that we stay on top of that. The other item that I want to talk about too is a reminder, the Facilities Committee meeting we will be having on the 24th at 6 o'clock. We did have the opportunity, Mr. Corley, Ms. Cropper, Mr. Hook, and myself, to sit down with FSE to go over the large facilities assessment that I've been informing you guys on. It was a small document, only 711 pages. It was an extremely detailed document, and we will be having the head of FSC at the facilities meeting to give a brief overview of some of their findings, and then Mr. Corley and I are working to refine that to make sure we come up with a strong list of priorities that we will be discussing at that meeting. Another thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, you've probably seen a lot of the great communications Mr. Vizon's been putting out with School Safety Month. It's been a great thing. We had our core team meeting as normal and everything. And so really appreciative this has been one of the best communication sets that I think we've had for Safety Month in quite some time. And I just want to publicly thank Josh for taking care of all that for us and doing a great job of it. And I guess I should include Arden too, because I'm sure she is, and making stuff happen from there also. And I will echo what Mr. Fellows said. We actually work pretty closely with communications on a regular basis, and Arden's been a great help, great asset. And that gives me a segue into we can finally herded cats. Okay? We now actually have a date for our community meeting that we have when we discuss safety with all the variety entities here in the township, and we will host that on December 5th. Right now, the exact time is not set, but it will be an AM time, morning time, somewhere between 9 and 11. It will not be a 2-hour meeting. We'll get invitations and stuff set out, but I thought I'd have a save the date for the board and anyone listening. Some of the people that will be part of this meeting and a share out of information: Anderson Township Fire and Rescue, Hamilton County Sheriffs, the township, the parks. We have representatives from Forest Hills Council that will be coming. The foundation will get invites. TSA and Homeland Security, EMA, county will be invited, and it's a wide variety of topics. And again, this is something we haven't done since COVID. Really excited about it, and this is great information share. You know, it's neat to hear what the township is doing in the realms of safety all the way, you know, to the county and everything. So it's a great opportunity for all the different entities to share out information, and a time for all of us to sit down for a short period of time and discuss some topics. So at this point, as I said, I do not have any actionable items. Does anyone have any questions on the information I shared at this time?
What does the FSC stand for?
Four Seasons Environmental.
Okay. And then, season environment. And then so will the PI list that we had out for the levy, that 2-pager, will it change based on these assessment needs?
To some degrees, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to steal a thunder because there's some real exciting news from the facilities assessment that we're going to get, we'll share out. But yes, I mean, in general, we're still dealing with roofs and asphalt, you know, brick mortar stuff. You know, so some of the priorities will change order.
Okay.
And everything, but that's through their detailed analysis by engineers and architects and designers. So it will tweak. It's not going to be I'm not going to say it's going to be a dramatic shift, but it definitely gave us insight that we did not have before to make more informed decisions, most definitely.
Good. Thank you, John.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up, teaching and learning.
Okay, I have the fun ones. I'm just asking, presenting for approval for a couple of overnight field trips. The first is a Turpin choir field trip that they're going to ask to take in February, going to New York City. It's very similar to about a year ago. We approved one for Anderson Choir to go, so now Turpin is looking to go. So a lot of great opportunities over the course of a few days for them. And the other one is for the Turpin dance team. They get invited, it seems, every year to perform at Nationals down in Orlando. So they're asking to go in March. So with that, I'm asking for your approval as part of the consent agenda. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Nope. Thank you. Next up, teaching and learning with Kim.
Teaching and learning with Kim. Betsy could not be here tonight. She had a prior engagement, so I'm just actually presenting on her behalf. It's a contract for Cotai. Coty. I wasn't sure exactly if it was Cotai or otherwise. It's an agreement with Forest Hills and the Cincinnati Occupational Therapy Institute. This is really to support the need for occupational therapy at Mercer Elementary. The contract and the agreement actually began on September 23rd, 4th of 2023, and it will continue through June 2024. It is worth noting that this was on our Hamilton County contract. We now have a reduction from Hamilton County, and so this will replace just that portion to support occupational therapy. So with that said, it's recommended that the board approve. If you don't have any questions.
Was the price the same on the,
Close. So it's I think maybe $800 more.
oh, okay.
But otherwise it was the same.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Then I move that we approve the resolution with Cotai. There we go.
Thank you. Next up, we have the treasurer's update.
Starting, the first item on the treasurer's agenda tonight is agenda item 11.1. And this is a workers' compensation settlement that we're bringing to you tonight. It's in the amount of $4,000. This settlement has been reviewed by our attorney and our third-party administrator of our self-insured workers' comp program. This settlement will resolve this claim, and it precludes further legal action arising from the employee's employment with the district. So I don't know if we have any questions on that. So moving on to the regular monthly report. The regular monthly report, of course, always starts with donations. And as you can see on agenda item 11.2A, during the last month, monetary and in-kind donations totaled just over $249,000. And as always, we appreciate all the donations that supplement our students' experience. So thank you to all those donors. Moving on to item B. This is a statement of board accounts, which of course presents all fund activity for our current fiscal year. And tonight's report covers the first quarter of our fiscal school year, 23-24. Now, I've added a couple columns to this report that I thought might give you a little bit more information and a little bit more transparency about where we are at the end of every month in all these funds. So the columns added are actually the last two on the right. The first added column is the encumbrances, and that column presents the amount of encumbrances outstanding at the end of the month. Encumbrances, of course, are the amount of funds that are committed to expenditures, but they've not yet been paid. So there's still, that amount's still in our fund cash balance. So, and of course, then the last column is the unencumbered fund balance at the end of the month, which of course takes the cash balance minus the encumbrances and shows the funds that are left to be committed within that fund. Moving on to item C, this presents the general fund revenues. So this is our 5-year forecast fund, presents receipts for the month of September and our first quarter to date. So September was a fairly high cash flow month as expected. During the month, we received the final installment of our fall property tax collections from the county. So remember, we get 2 of these a year, one in the fall and one in the spring. So that is the final of our fall collection. At this point, revenues are tracking as would be expected. The next 2 reports, items D and E, present general fund expenditures. And at the end of our first quarter in our new school year, we have spent 22.3% of our appropriations, with another 11.1% committed for future expenditures. Moving on to item F. This presents the activity in our main permanent improvement special cost center for the month of September and for our fiscal year to date. So this is where we deposit our tax revenues that come in for our PI fund. And of course, we have not yet got the first installment in taxes from our new levy just passed. That first installment will come with the spring settlement. And as Mr. Hook said earlier, we hope that spring settlement's on time. We're a little bit worried, and we're watching House Bill 187 very closely. So we hope it's on time. Moving on, the next report, item G, is our September 30th bank reconciliation and investments. Agenda item 11.2J shows the increases to appropriations for the month. All these increases are due to the grants awarded by the Forest Hills Foundation for Education. So I know Stacy presented those last month, and we actually have the revenue now, and we are putting it in the funds for the awardees to be able to spend. Moving on, agenda item I presents the rates for our employee benefits plan year, which our plan year runs with the calendar year. So our plan year starts on January 1st, 2024. Voluntary benefits rates, so those rates or those plans paid for by completely by the employee remain the same. So the vision, life, accidental death, and disability rates all had no increase from last year. Health insurance did increase. Our total premium increased by 3.2%, but over the last 9 years, our percentage increases in health insurance have actually ranged from a decrease of 3.8% one year, and our highest was an increase of 10.7%. So with the average increase over the last 9 years being 4.2%. So with our increase at 3.2, I think our consortium serves us well. And of course, remember, our health insurance is a self-insurance, but we do bid out those administrative costs and things that are included in that. So we're pleased that we're able to contain those costs. Our dental increase was small. It actually increased by 0.9%. And as always, as part of the SWISH consortium and also with our insurance committee, which all three of our associations sit on, we do take time to work with Haran, who is the broker that runs SWISH, to make sure that we're pushing proper education programs out to help our employees manage their health and to educate them on primary care and the things that they can do to effectively and efficiently utilize their health insurance. So we do try to keep that education piece going to keep our rates down. That said, I believe that concludes the treasurer's report, and I respectfully ask that you approve the treasurer's report. As part of the consent agenda, that starts with 7.1 and ends with 11.2.
When will you think we will receive the TIF, the 15 million in TIF? Is that a spring?
We actually, part of the TIF agreement with the township says that they have it to us within 30 days after the final settlement, each settlement. So I actually have in October, we received half of it. So we got about 6.8 million earlier this month. So in October, we have received the half from the township.
Okay.
So it too comes in 2 steps like that.
Okay. When's the other half come in?
30 days after the final spring settlement. So they have 30 days to do their calculation and get us our share.
Okay.
I'm sorry, any other questions?
No questions? Next up, we have the committee reports. First, we have the Teaching and Learning Committee.
We need to vote on them.
Oh,
as
sorry.
consent agenda.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm moving on fast here today.
I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 7.1 to 11.2 as presented.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
Since there was no action item in 8.1, do we start it at 9.1 and then include 7.1? Not to make things more complicated, but Or does it not matter?
We're okay because we are saying to approve the consent action items
Action
within
items only.
those.
Okay.
And
Thank you for the
8 was
clarification.
informational item.
Okay.
So I think, but good question. Do we have a
We have a
second
second.
on the
Second.
consent? Mrs. Jonas?
Yes.
Mr. Bibb?
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen?
Yes.
Mrs. Stewart?
Yes.
Mrs. Hosfeld?
Yes. Now up, we have the committee reports. We have teaching and learning.
All right, so we met October 4th, and we went over some of our course of study updates. We've put together, or they're putting together, a wish list for art and, I only put down art. Was there other groups that?
Music, PE.
Do they have wish lists as well? Okay, I only put down the pottery for art. I know we don't need any textbooks, and so we'll be working on health in the spring. And I know we pushed back social studies due to some legislation, but we do need to be diligent about getting on that as soon as everything is put together. And we also talked about the dyslexia law and looking for characteristics. Let's see. What else did I have? I know we got grants for the spelling bee, and we have parent guides for all the elementary school grades, and working on putting together a parent survey. Did you have anything else?
So we had talked about too, with sources of strength, how so based on the SAVE Act and Aaron's Law, we were given, I guess, certain vendors, and we did, Hope Squad wasn't on there, so the alternative was sources of strength, and this is a preventative program rather than a responsive program, like Hope Squad. The 1 in 5 Warrior Run, right? We talked about that. Parent Academy, School Connection Survey.
We talked about Rachel's challenge too, looking into that, a little bit. I missed that page. It was sticking together.
So it was a lot. It was a good meeting. It
I
was.
agree.
Katie, when you say wish list, can you elaborate on what that means?
Get back to that page. It was what
courses of
the
study.
teachers would want in those, where did I put it? There it is. Like PE might want more basketballs or nets or something like that. I wrote down a pottery kiln for art. That was the biggest one I remember here. Yeah, it was, that one stuck out a little bit. And so it was just resources that they would want for music, art, PE, drama, that kind of stuff.
Is it things that the district would provide, or that's something that can be used more broadly to outsource through donations and PTOs and that kind of stuff? Or?
Kim wants to answer. Yeah.
Typically every 5 years we do a review because we align to our state standards, and they
Right.
review them and revise them every 5 years. So right now with our electives, like the state is still in the process of finalizing, but in conversations we've had with representatives, we're not seeing that there's expected changes. So the
Okay.
studies, we're waiting to see.
Okay.
So this is our opportunity to look at resources that are going to support their instruction over the next 5 years. We have, like last year with science, I know our foundation helped us with resources, so that helped to offset some costs. So we are, if anybody's willing to donate, we're more than willing to talk
I mean,
about
I have a pottery clue. Just kidding, I don't. I would love one though.
We have a course of study that's set aside, we budget each year.
Okay.
So we anticipate that, unlike textbooks, we'll still use that to support our electives
Right.
each year.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious. It sounded, I don't know, like an area of help, so thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we have the policy committee. So So on the policy committee met on October 5th, and we met with a small group of people with Neola, who is our policy update committee that we've been working with for a long time. And they brought forward some updates to some of the policies that we had that have been come down through the state. For instance, I'll just read off. There's 16 policy revisions in there. If anybody wants to see them, they're on board docs, and you're more than welcome to come out. Go check them out and read up. There's conflict of interest, third grade reading, employment of personnel for curricular and extracurricular, employment of personnel for curricular, intra-district open enrollment, immunization, care of students with active seizure disorders, Board of Revision complaints and counter complaints, facility securities, volunteers, school calendars, student records, transportation by school vans, public attendance at school events, and equivalent education outside the schools. So 16 policy revisions, we're bringing them forward for a first reading, which means you have until the next board meeting to check them out, and if you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to us. Any questions? No questions. Okay, we'll move on to the Human Resource Committee report.
We met on Monday, the 16th. Rob gave a pretty good description of what, we had spoke about in the HR committee meeting. I think the biggest takeaway is going to be the position control system that the treasurer's office and the HR office will be able to talk to each other, and it'll be filled positions versus, new positions. So I'd like to see, I'm eager to see that when it comes up. I think it'll be less confusion with the FTEs and everything too, so. That's about it for me.
Thank you. Next up, we have board discussion. Any board member would like to take the floor? I'm moving on then to 14.0, adjournment. We have the next scheduled board meeting on November 15th. Same time, same place. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mrs. Jonas?
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen?
Yes.
Mr. Bibb?
Yes.
Mrs. Stewart?
Yes.
Mrs. Hosfeld?
Yes. Thank you all for attending this evening.